Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today. My name is Bancroft Wright, and I am a constable in the Media Relations Office. Back on November 12, 2019, we initiated a press conference in relation to the mistaken identity shooting death of 23-year-old Jason Ramkishun. At that press conference, Jason's family was present. Today, Inspector Ottaway will share some of the conversation that he's had with the Ramkishun family, and that will be shared during his conversation piece. Today's press conference is in relation to the arrest and charges regarding the Highway 410 shootings, and more specifically, the shooting death of Jason Ramkishun. With us today is Chief Nishan Duryapa, Inspector Marty Ottaway, who is in charge of the Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau. The Chief and Inspector will take questions momentarily. I just ask that you stand up to the mic, positioned at left and right, during the Q&A session. I would like to remind everyone that this is still an ongoing investigation and that some of the details cannot be shared. This is to ensure that future proceedings will not be compromised. At the conclusion of the press conference, a news release will be issued. A full video of this press conference will be made available on the Peel Regional Police YouTube channel, which can be accessed from our website. I will now turn the microphone over to Chief Duryapa.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we begin this announcement resolving the homicide investigation of Jason Ramkishun. As you can see by the display of the prevalence of firearms, that this is an ongoing issue. It's a criminal activity that has a lot of victims involved, not just those on the periphery, but of course, in this case, one particular family and one individual that we'd like to speak about. But this is not only specific to Peel Region, this is a GTA-wide problem, and this seizure of firearms is as a result of this one particular homicide investigation. I just ask you to consider what the broader scope of firearms prevalence looks like in our community. So with that, on Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, at approximately 12:55 a.m., such an impact happened in our community and affected one family of Peel Region, who that night discovered that their son was not going to be coming home that evening as a result of gun violence. Jason was tragically shot while traveling his vehicle on Highway 410 near Courtney Park in the city of Mississauga. He was going home after work and was shot as a result of mistaken identity. As a young man, he had aspirations of entering law enforcement and had a great presence within his family and the community. Inspector Ottaway will speak to the chronological timeline of this investigation, and I would like to first thank the dedicated men and women who have been tirelessly working on this investigation since November 13, 2018. I've stated before that no matter what the act of violence is that impacts our community or individuals in our community, that we will relentlessly pursue these individuals. And this is an example of one which I must give the credit to the officers for working round the clock on this investigation. It couldn't also be done without the assistance of the public and the community. I also need to say that on January 20th, our region received funding from the provincial government, which represents dollars that will be oriented towards tools to assist in the investigation of firearms and guns and gangs violence. Guns and gangs, and the guns are a symptom of the substantive issue, pose a serious risk to our community. These funds that we will be utilizing will help mitigate and investigate issues in our region. I need to say also earlier this week, I had the opportunity with several GTA mayors, the mayors of my municipalities of Mississauga and Brampton, and our regional chair to meet with others in the GTA and other GTA police chiefs to discuss some of the issues that are plaguing our broader geographic boundaries. As such, I'll be happy post this press conference, which is of course related to this homicide investigation, to answer any broader questions. We will continue to make efforts to resolve violent offenses and the homicide investigations that plagued this region, and we will continue to do so with our GTA partners. At this point, it's my pleasure to pass the microphone over to Inspector Marty Ottaway of our Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau, who will speak more to the specifics of this investigation and the ongoing investigation. Marty?
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank you all for coming here today. As you've all heard, we're here today to provide an update into arrests we've made in relation to 3 shooting incidents that took place in both Mississauga and Brampton between November 10th and November 20th, 2018. This includes the homicide of Jason Ramkishun on Highway 410. Through our investigation, we have learned the following in relation to these 3 incidents. On November 10th, 2018, just after 11 p.m., there was an altercation between a number of people on Del Monte Crescent in Mississauga. During this altercation, 24-year-old Trayvon Edwards Bryan was armed with a firearm and fired numerous rounds at a male victim. The victim fled in his 2013 Honda Accord without sustaining any injuries. Trayvon was arrested and charged in December 2018 with attempted murder and several firearm-related charges. We believe this incident was the catalyst for what came next. On Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, at approximately 12:55 a.m., Jason Ramkishun was coming home from work as a security guard. He was traveling north on Highway 410 by Courtney Park Drive in Mississauga in his 2014 Honda Accord, when another vehicle pulled alongside his car and a suspect opened fire. Jason Ramkishun was found in his vehicle suffering from gunshot wounds. He was transported to a trauma center where, despite everyone's best efforts, he succumbed to his injuries. Jason and the victim of the shooting on Del Monte Crescent drove the same type of vehicle. On Tuesday, November 20th, 2018, shortly after 11 p.m., the male victim from the Del Monte Crescent shooting on November 10th, 2018, was driving his 2013 Honda Accord northbound on Highway 410, just north of Derry Road in Brampton, when a vehicle pulled alongside him and 2 suspects started shooting. The victim's vehicle was struck numerous times, and the victim was hit by gunfire himself. The victim was able to drive himself to a local hospital where he was transported to a trauma center and has recovered from his physical injuries. This past week, on Tuesday, January 28, 2020, the Homicide Bureau executed a number of search warrants in the Greater Toronto area and made several arrests in relation to these shootings. Arrested were the following: Adrian Williams, a 25-year-old man, for first-degree murder involving Jason Ramkishun and the attempted murder of the victim on Highway 410 in Brampton. Akeem Williams, a 28-year-old man, for attempted murder of the victim on Highway 410 in Brampton. Both Akeem and Adrian have ties to the Greater Toronto area. Janiqua Elwood, a 26-year-old woman from Markham, is facing a charge of accessory after fact to murder. Siobhan Grant, a 26-year-old woman from Milton, is facing 2 counts of possession for the purpose of trafficking. Our first shooting on November 10th, 2018, Travis Edwards Bryan was arrested and charged with attempted murder on December 1st, 2018. He is currently in custody awaiting trial. Throughout the course of this lengthy investigation, it became apparent that the people I have just listed, along with other associates, were involved in gun and gang crime. As you will see in front of me, a number of firearms were seized during the course of this investigation, including a .45 caliber handgun, 2 .40 caliber handguns, 5 9mm handguns, and a .22 caliber Mossberg assault rifle. A total of 15 people have been arrested over the course of this investigation and are facing 115 firearm-related charges. In August 2019, a Taurus semi-automatic .45 caliber handgun, which is on the table here today, was seized during an investigation of a vehicle in Mississauga. With the assistance of the Center of Forensic Sciences, it has been established that this firearm was the one used in the homicide of Jason Ramkishun, and also one of the 2 firearms used in the second 410 shooting in Brampton. Jarrett Phillips, a 25-year-old man of no fixed address, has been associated to this .45 caliber firearm and is wanted for a number of firearm-related offenses, though it should be noted that he is not involved in the homicide or the other attempted murder investigations. We are, however, looking for Jarrett Phillips and encourage him to contact legal counsel and turn himself in. As a reminder to anyone who may be assisting Jarrett Phillips in evading arrest, they will be subject to criminal charges themselves. Anyone with information on Jarrett Phillips' whereabouts is encouraged to contact police or Crime Stoppers. Homicide investigations are complex and at times can take an extensive period of time to solve. It should be noted that even though time does go by, our investigators are working tirelessly to bring a successful conclusion to all of our cases. This investigation illustrates our organization's commitment to that and stopping gun violence. Not only will we arrest those responsible for involvement in homicide cases, we will arrest and prosecute anyone who's associating with people involved in gun and gang violence for any criminal offenses we uncover. As I have said before, we will not tolerate this within our community. I also wanted to publicly acknowledge and thank Detective Rob Bryant, Detective Constable Lawrence Lowe, and the entire Jason Ramkishun homicide investigative team for their perseverance in this case, bringing those responsible to justice and providing some closure for the Ramkishun family. I spent some time with the Ramkishun family this week, and they have asked that I share that they are also thankful and appreciative of all the hard work and dedication displayed by the investigators working on Jason's murder. They wanted me to remind everyone that Jason had a passion for law enforcement, and he was focused on achieving that goal and being able to serve and protect the community himself. This has been a tragedy for the family and friends, and they miss him terribly. This investigation is still ongoing, and we anticipate laying further charges. Even though we have made arrests, we still encourage the public who have information into these shootings to contact us. We ask that anyone with information related to this investigation contact the Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau at 905-453-2121, extension 3205, or through Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS, or online at plcrimestoppers.ca. And we'll now be able to take some questions.
Is Adrian and Hakeem Williams related?
They're brothers, yes.
Can you just recap the first shooting, once again, that kind of triggered the two subsequent shootings on the 410?
That shooting took place on November 10th, 2018 on Del Monte Crescent in Mississauga.
Can you talk about the connection between the people that you have arrested in the three shootings and you talked about many more people being charged over the course of this investigation. Do they all have a hand in those three shootings at all, or what are we looking at?
So the people I've listed that we've charged for murder and attempted murder are the only ones involved in the shootings. Through the course of our investigation over the last 14, coming up to 15 months, it became very apparent that themselves and their associates were all involved in gun and gang crime. Evidences of criminal activity and firearm-related offenses were uncovered, and we arrested a total of 15 people over the course of this past 15 months and seized the firearms that you see in front of you today.
And are those people that you've charged with murder and attempted murder, do they have specific gang affiliations that you're talking about?
They are associated with gang and gun crime, yes.
Can you say which gang specifically?
I don't believe in naming the gang itself that they're involved in, only because I don't believe they need or deserve the notoriety that's involved with this. So I'll just say that they're involved in gun and gang crime within the Greater Toronto area.
Inspector, do you believe that Mr. Ramkishun, when they targeted him and then the subsequent shooting after, was that meant to be some sort of retaliation, or do you know what the motive was behind it?
So Jason was murdered purely because he was driving the same vehicle as the intended target on Del Monte Crescent in the second shooting on the 410. It's a set of tragic circumstances where Jason just happened to be coming home from work. I believe it was his third shift as a security guard. He was on his way home to Brampton, and he just happened to be traveling a route that the Williams, or Adrian Williams, was also traveling. And it's our belief that they were looking for the intended target at that time, and they mistook Jason's car for the other victim's vehicle.
I know you spoke a little bit about his family, maybe you spent some time with him, but I was wondering if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit. Obviously, it's been a devastating year and a bit for them. When you came to them and told them that you were making arrests and you believe you've caught people responsible for this, what was their reaction? I know it doesn't bring them back, but I'm sure they felt some sort of maybe a little bit. It's welcome news, I'm sure.
They were very appreciative of the hard work that was done. They were happy to know that the people responsible were arrested. But as you've alluded to, some people talk closure, but this doesn't really bring closure to them. It's not going to bring Jason back. Yeah, in some ways, I guess it kind of opens wounds again with developments in the case, and they're still going to be facing a long road ahead of them with the court process. So they were appreciative that they've been taken off the street, but still, it's a very difficult loss they're dealing with, and that's an ongoing process for them.
Can you just, go ahead.
Inspector, a couple questions. If you wouldn't mind, best you can, tell us about the investigation, because you really had very little to work with in the beginning. You had this person, Jason, that was hit, who obviously went back and sorted out other shootings and tied it to it. So maybe a little bit on the investigation. And also, if you wouldn't mind letting us know, I know there was a reward, how much help did you get from the public in terms of tips and that they get to where you are today?
Well, from the onset, this was a very difficult investigation because, as you do with every homicide, you look at who the victim is involved and what their background is, and it was very apparent that Jason was a hardworking and good member of the community, and there seemed to be no rhyme or reason as to why he would have been targeted. This was a very difficult investigation. I can say the investigative team. There wasn't one significant break in this case. I think that to bring it to a successful conclusion, it was strictly through their perseverance, through a number of different investigative avenues to gather the evidence that was needed. But it did take a significant amount of time in order to accomplish that. As far as the reward, it did not result in any information coming forward. However, I still think that it's the rewards are a very valuable investigative tool, and we're appreciative of the Police Services Board for assisting us with that avenue.
Can you also just recap Trayvon Edwards' involvement in this? He was the individual that was initially fired shots that kind of kickstarted this catalyst towards these other two shootings?
That's correct. So our allegation is that on November 10th, 2018, he was on Del Monte Crescent. He was in possession of a firearm, and he fired a number of rounds at the intended target after an altercation.
Was that target in a Honda Accord?
That's correct. He was in the Honda Accord, and then he was arrested early December for attempted murder charges. He is a friend or associate of both Akeem and Adrian Williams.
And he was arrested in December of 2018.
That's correct.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you said he was acquaintances connected to these two brothers as well?
That's right.
Is this Trayvon part of this gang-related activity as well?
He is.
The intended target who drove the Accord on Del Monte, is that the man who was ultimately shot on the 410 on the 20th?
That's correct. He is.
Okay, and just to get this straight with the two brothers, was it only Adrian who's involved in the shooting of Jason Ramkishun and then both brothers in the shooting on the 20th?
That is correct.
Are all the accused from Peel, or whereabouts are they in the GTA?
So Adrian and Akeem Williams, they're primarily, they've got ties within the region of Peel. However, there is connections into the Toronto area as well. They're not of a fixed address. Siobhan Grant, who was arrested last Tuesday, she's from Milton. Janiko Elwood was from Markham. She was charged with accessory after the fact. Of the individuals charged with the number of firearm offenses, it's across the GTA where they have connections to.
Where would
Both
they,
Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton.
were they operating anywhere specifically, like within Peel, Brampton, Mississauga?
I would say primarily their ties were to the region of Peel.
What is Ms. Elwood's connection to the accused?
She is the girlfriend of Adrian Williams.
Is it possible to just ask the chief a quick question? Chief, you talked about the meeting you had at Toronto City Hall earlier this week with all the other mayors and chiefs and other representatives of government. I know this is the type of thing that would have come up there, or crimes like this. Coming out of that meeting, do you feel confident or optimistic that what the issues were that you have here in Peel were shared among other chiefs, and that you were heard, and that something productive will come out of that?
Yes, so I think the first thing is that amongst police leaders, there is a lot of deep connections. We speak regularly at the chief's level and right down to the investigative level. So there's a lot of line of sight into the prominent issues. This week's meeting, I think, achieved, and not that it didn't exist before, but it certainly achieved clarity amongst municipal leaders of the real issues that we're facing as it pertains to gun and gang violence. Because in the whole subject matter, you know, it's been studied across the states, other countries, on how to prevent and mitigate risk. We really wanted to get down to the fact that there are a small subset of individuals, scalable based on the size of a municipality, that are responsible for multiple events. And, you know, here we're looking at multiple shootings on the 410 in municipal addresses, all because of a small set of people. So I think when we talk about risk in the community, we're talking about a small subset of high-risk individuals that have access to illegal firearms. I think one of the things that Inspector Ottaway didn't really get into is that I believe that all the ones seized in this investigation are illegally obtained from the U.S. And so the ability to sit down with municipal leaders to speak to the fact that we recognize it's a small subset. The firearms issues are, you know, predominantly, I think here in Peel, 79% of what we seize is illegal firearms from south of the border. And also to discuss the ability to enhance, technology as it comes across policing sectors, the information sharing. So that brought visibility, and I think that's an important thing because we could dilute the issues if we go too broad. You know, nationally, even provincially, we've got lots of municipalities that are facing gun violence, but to be able to say between several key large GTA agencies that we have consistency from a municipal and a police leadership standpoint, that was very effective.
Chief, I was wondering if you can comment on the nature of this brazen shooting and just the overall disregard for human life that a lot of these gang individuals are demonstrating, and how concerning this is to not only you, but just to the public in general.
Sure, I think, so let me first start with, in 2018 in Peel Region, there were about 111 investigated shootings, and in 2019, there were 113. So it's a slight increase. Here's what the difference is that we've seen, is we went in 2018 from roughly 500 rounds discharged to over 700 rounds in 2019. In 2019, we saw daytime shootings with other innocent individuals involved, unfortunately, in the shootings. The boldness of the nature of shootings has certainly been notably changed in the last year, from public places on highways. You know, Jason is a perfect example of an individual with really little discernment. They're demonstrating blatant violence. And our officers see that daytime, afternoon, evening. And that's not just unique to Peel Region. I think it would be similar to other municipalities. The nature of how gun violence has changed is notable. The access, I think if you talk to our guns and gangs investigators, even the homicide investigators, what maybe 5 years ago for an individual in this, you know, environment to obtain a legal firearm took a little bit of work. Now I think it's more prevalent. In fact, you know, when it comes time for conflict, there's almost always a firearms present in that midst. So the introduction to it in the midst of conflict results in, you know, more blatant and effortless violence. And back to what I was saying is that it's a small group who have access. And when I say small group, that speaks to what the public perceives is something that's sort of unraveled. And we've demonstrated here 3 firearms-related incidents that were extremely public, that captured probably pretty much all of Ontario because they're on 400 series highways, that are a small group of individuals. And you can just see the demonstration of firearms that came along with it.
Chief, is there any way of knowing where these guns are from?
Well, I just want to just double check with Inspector Ottaway. We believe they're all American.
All the guns that we seized are all traced, and I don't have the exact locations with me right now, but they're all from the United States.
Yeah, I want to ask the chief another question as well. This is a national tragedy, what happened to Jason. He's an innocent person, put in this room, was gunned down. This was more, make a little bit of commentary, but this was obviously more than, I mean, when you look at those weapons, this was its own street justice that's going on there. In addition to, making this arrest, you've done a great job in getting those guns as part of that. My question is that, I don't know whether, there's the scientific investigative side, but there's gotta be some sort of an outrage that this happened, and that this is going on right here in Peel. And, I just was wondering if you could comment on that, but this is not tolerable, what we're seeing here.
It absolutely is an outrage, because if you look at where communities were and where they are now, and you see the marked departure of what's being experienced, I think for the general public to be able to say that they're satisfied with, what is current day events is we'd all agree that it's intolerable. It really is intolerable. And what we need to do is obviously focus on what are controllable factors in the profiles of the individuals that we end up arresting. For example, many of them have been involved, not all of them, but many of them involved with, the justice system perhaps previously. We do know that individuals that are involved in gun violence are also involved with secondary, tertiary criminal activities, whether it be gun trafficking or human trafficking. And we also do know that a lot of the violence originates from, very innocuous conflict, from, as easy as the theft of, items and jewelry. Not that this investigation pertained to that, but conflict can arise between gangs and individuals very easily. And when they have the ability to have access to firearms extremely, with ease, then we see the violence continuing. So, some of these individuals will be before the court system, and that needs to take its course. We do our best to present the best evidence with our Crown attorneys so that, they can prosecute them. In time, not all of them will remain in custody. And when they enter back into an environment, we see that small group of individuals back. Again, I'm not saying carte blanche, but they tend to immerse themselves back into those circles, and either they become a victim or they become, again, armed again and back in that cycle. And some of the names, I think, Inspector Ottaway would have to comment on the history of the individuals that we've identified. I think there's 4, and we're looking for 1 more outstanding. But in the totality of this entire investigation, there were 15 people that we've come across. And many of them are all, they're known to us. They're known to police.
Going back to the shooting on November 10th on Del Monte, the intended target, have you spoken with that individual? Do you know who that intended target was?
We have.
Did they sustain any injuries?
He did sustain, not on the November 10th shooting. Yeah, he was not injured. On the November 20th second shooting, he was struck by gunfire.
Is he being cooperative with you guys?
We have spoken to him, and he has been cooperative.
I know you don't want to name the gang affiliations that are involved here, but are we dealing with, gangs warring each other or a dispute within one gang?
For this particular investigation, as the chief kind of commented on already, this was a very, very minor, what I consider like a minor incident that happened on November 10th. But by the fact that people involved were armed with firearms, it's resulted in a firearm being discharged. which has then escalated the situation to what you saw happen on the 410 in the subsequent weeks.
But that dispute between the shooter and the eventual target, were they part of the same operation? Were they rivals? Like, how is it that that started in the first
They
place?
were not friends or associates. This was strictly, almost by, I guess, fate, two separate, basically a separate group, and the intended target just crossing paths.
And the target, does he have gang affiliations?
He's known to police, yes.
Inspector, have all the people who have been arrested or charged appeared before the courts already?
Sorry?
Have they made their first appearance?
Yes, the people arrested for the murder and attempted murder charges were arrested on Tuesday. They've already been to court, yes.
Given the success of the seizures of all these firearms, can we expect more of these raids to be executed?
There will be further arrests and charges that we anticipate in relation to this investigation. It was a very lengthy investigation, as I kind of alluded to. One thing I'll add to your point there is homicide investigations are complex investigations. They do take time, as is seen with this investigation. So with all the other gun-related and gang-related homicides and shootings that we're looking into, we're very happy with the progress that's being made, and everyone should just stay tuned for what takes place next.
What's the message to individuals out there who may be watching, who might know something, who might have helped out any of these suspects after the fact, who could be helpful in any way? What's the message to those individuals who might be sitting on some information?
Well, we encourage anyone who has information in relation to this this particular homicide or the other two shootings, or any other homicide or shooting that's taken place within the region we encourage them to contact us and provide that information. As for people who, as you talked about, that may be assisting people involved in these shootings, then they also will be, as we've shown in this investigation, we're not only just investigating an attempted murder or homicide, any other offenses we come across, especially gun and gang-related crime, we will be prosecuting people on those.
Inspector, there was two shootings earlier this week in Mississauga on Acorn. Do you believe those to be gang-related or gun violence-related?
Those two shootings that took place in Acorn Place are not related to this particular investigation. The Homicide Missing Person Bureau is obviously not investigating those, but I can say it is early on in the investigation with those. So I think it's too early to say just yet as to what the motive is in those investigations or who's associated with them.
Can you say in general what kind of criminal enterprise this was? Was it drug-related, human trafficking? Is there...
The people involved in this case are involved in gun and gang crime, whether it's firearm trafficking, drug trafficking, shootings.